Today, my mini fish room gets a jungle-inspired DIY makeover. From a leafy green feature wall to plants, artwork and much more. We'll also be doing a little winter update on the pond and having a look at what's going on under that cover. That is for later on in the video though. For now, we need to get onto this jungle makeover. And I'm starting by clearing out this somewhat neglected kind of storage stroke dumping area of the fish room. Now, I still want to be able to store a few things in this area, but I also want to be able to display a few things, maybe even add a couple of nano tanks. So with all that moved and the old artwork taken down, it was time to start stripping off the wallpaper. I was hoping this was going to come off easily, however it did not, so the steamer had to come out and that made things a lot easier. Although a chunk of plaster did end up coming off with the wallpaper, so I will have to deal with that. But yeah, once the wallpaper was off, I did a bit of filling, added a bit of skim where the plaster fell off, and caulked the skirting. Once dry, I sanded, and then drilled a few holes in preparation for a couple of things I'll be adding later on. With that done though, I sealed the walls with some watered down wallpaper paste, and it was then time to really transform this wall by adding a feature wallpaper. And as you can see, I've gone for this very cool leafy green jungly style of paper. And that really has completely transformed this wall. It also matches my window coverings pretty well, which is nice. But with that done, I located the previously drilled holes and went about screwing on some heavy duty shelving brackets. With that done, I headed to B&Q where I picked up some hardboard and whilst there, got them to cut it down to the exact size required. Saving me a job, so once home I could crack straight on with added some light oak wood stain to match the rest of the wood in the fish room. And once dry, I placed them into position. With that done, I moved the table back because it's always handy to have a table in a fish room for projects and stuff, and then added my spare gravel and hardscape underneath, ready for future setups. With all that done though, it was time to add some bits and bobs to the shelves. Things I've been collecting over the past few months in preparation for this big makeover. And I'm starting with this very cool Welcome to the Jungle neon style sign. Seen this at the range and straight away thought that is going to be perfect for the jungle fish room. Plus by putting it here, it will be the first thing you see when you enter through the door. Next up, as you can see, I've got an artificial trailing plant. Obviously real would be better, but this room doesn't get an awful lot of natural light, so I will be making use of some artificial plants in this jungle makeover. But we will also be using some real ones later on. Next up, I grabbed my lava lamp and positioned it up at the back there. Tried to hide the cords the best that I could, then added a piece of mapani wood that I was going to use in one of my tanks but changed my mind. I then popped up another artificial plant and then added all my aquarium stroke pond books. With that shelf filled though, I grabbed a little 10 litre or 2.5 gallon nano tank that I've had lying around for ages. Pop that on the second shelf. But yeah, as you can see, I've also added another fake plant and I've also put my iPad up here. That way I can listen to live streams and stuff whilst doing water changes to keep myself occupied. And then finally, now I found this on eBay and I had to get it, a YouTube subscribe cushion. Just as a little reminder that if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button because I've got a lot of cool stuff planned. But yeah, that finished off the shelves nicely and we're looking good. And with the shelving done, we can move on to the next area that we need to tackle. And as you can see, the first thing I need to do is to deal with this mess of a tank that I used as a quarantine tank ages ago and never got around to cleaning. So as you can see, I've emptied it down, and once empty, I'm heading off outside to hose it down and give it a good old scrub. So with the tank clean, I thought whilst we're out here in the garden, let's check out the pond, see how it's faring over the winter. Because at time of filming, it was still winter. Obviously in real time, we're just about coming into spring. But yeah, pretend for a second we're in the midst of winter. And as you can see, I've taken off the bubble wrap off the top and also the polycarbonate cover. And inside the pond is looking good. Fish all well. Water nice and clear. Flow rate on the filters seems fine. Also, if you've seen my pre-winter shutdown video in which I prepared the pond for the winter, you'll know that I added a couple of heaters to the filter which was set to turn on if the pond dropped below 8.5 degrees C or 47 degrees Fahrenheit, and I don't think it has, so I don't think the heater's ever turned on, which means all the insulation and the covers worked really well. To be fair though, we have had a pretty mild winter, but yeah, I gave the fish a bit of food, shut the pond back up, and hopefully I'll have a video coming very soon on opening up all the ponds for the spring. Back inside though, and the tank is in position and looking a lot better. So let me know in the comments what I should do with this tank. I've got a couple of ideas floating about, but would be interested to know what you would do. Bearing in mind it is 55 litres, which is about 15 gallons. To finish up though, I added this little boat that I picked up on a recent trip to the Lake District, along with a decorative piece of driftwood. With that done though, it was time to open up a little Amazon delivery, and what we have in here is a jungle themed clock. So I popped a nail in the wall using a rubber mallet because I couldn't find my hammer, and with the clock in position, I'll now always know the time when in the jungle fish room. Next up though, I want to deal with this bucket of plants and replace it with a proper tank. So the bucket came out, a new tank went in, and I now have a nice place to store any spare plants and trimmings. So now that the bucket has been replaced with a nice new tank, I decided to do something that I've been meaning to do for ages, but for some reason put it off. And that was, as you can see, to cut a couple of OSB boards down to size, stain them up, and add them to the sides of the stand. Which, with the addition of this little cover, finished it all off nicely. And with that all done and looking good, we could move on to the next area of the fish room, which is where my guppy tank is located. Now, as you can see, this tank is very overstocked. I started just over a year ago with 10 guppies and 10 cherry shrimp, and both the guppies and the cherry shrimp have multiplied a lot. I have heard though that a guppy colony will eventually balance itself out, but I'm not too sure. Anyway, before we go any further, I just want to mention I have got something pretty cool planned for the gap between these two areas, but I'm saving that for later on in the video because I want it to be like the finishing touch to the jungle makeover. For now though, I'm going to start by getting rid of some of these bits, probably just going to get rid of the vase and put the driftwood in the little nano tank over here. Now, as you can see, I've got a bit of pothos growing out the top of this tank, which I finally managed to get going with the help of these grow lights. And I'm hoping, given a bit of time, this pothos will start to spread all around the fish room, which would really add to that jungle vibe. Next up though, I took the picture off the wall. It just wasn't jungly enough, and I'm replacing it with this much bigger frame. And the plan is to use wallpaper to create a cool piece of artwork. So I've taken the board out of the back of the frame, which I'm going to be using as like a template to paste the wallpaper to. And with the board papered and left to dry, I flipped it over, trimmed off the edges, put it back in the frame, secured it into position. We are looking good. So I hung it up on the wall, and as you can see, it kind of looks like an old overgrown window looking out into the jungle, which I thought was pretty cool. But to really make it pop, I added an artificial vine down the side of the frame. And because I bought a couple of these vines, I added a second one on top of my goldfish picture. I then added this leafy thing on top of the frame, just as a bit of extra greenery. With that done though, I added a piece of decorative spider wood and a little framed photo of my pond, just as a nice summertime reminder. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how that's all looking, but what I want to do now is to add an extra light above my little 10-gallon tank down here, below the guppy tank. And yeah, I know this tank doesn't look great, but that is because it is soon to be broken down, as the only two fish in here are two elderly ember tetra, the remaining two of a larger group that I'm currently in the process of building a little retirement tank for. So they will be moving into that tank in the not too distant future. Anyway, like I said, I want to add an extra light down here, so I picked up this Hygge light from Amazon, and I'm going to just screw it up above the tank, and I'm hoping that should provide sufficient lighting for this little plant, and also any future plants like pothos that I may want to grow out the top of the tank. That completes the junglification of this area though. which means we can move on to the goldfish sector of the fish room. So these are my 3 fancy goldfish. Had them over a year now and they're all doing really well. And what I plan to do over here is to first add some artwork. So after checking my levels and marking up the wall, I added some of these command canvas hangers ready for these 3 leafy canvases. Once that was done, I added a nice green artificial plant and a piece of mopani wood just to add a bit of interest to the top of the aquarium hood. And with that done, I want to add another of these big leaves to the aquarium stand cover here. And I just stapled it on and it definitely adds some jungle-esque vibes. Now that is complete though, I'm going to be adding this leaf neon wall light and I'm just going to screw it to the wall up here. And yeah, that is looking very cool. That does lead me onto this little area though, and for this space here I picked up a poster frame, and to go inside this poster frame I have this very cool picture of an elephant. Nice and colourful with like a graffiti vibe to it. And reason being, this is obviously a jungle inspired makeover and elephants live in the jungle. So after struggling to get the poster in the frame, I drilled a hole, whacked a screw in, hung it up, and even though it already looks pretty good as is, just to make it look even better, I added another one of these artificial vines to it. With that done though, I've got yet another package to open, and in here I've got this pretty cool wall sculpture of some swimming fish, and that is going to fit perfectly above the window here. I then added a new plant to the windowsill, a real plant this time as it should get enough light here. Then rolled out my new rug, which is actually an outdoor rug, so it should be both waterproof and hard wearing. And again, I stuck with that leafy jungle theme. Then I swapped out my old chair for a more fish room friendly chair, being both foldable and wipeable, and spruced it up with a little leafy decal. And with that all done, it was finally time to open this massive box, which has been sat in my bedroom, right in the way of the wardrobe for almost 3 months. And that is because I told myself I wasn't allowed to open it until the makeover was complete. And as I open this box up, I'm now a bit worried I built this up way too much and it's going to be a massive anticlimax. But as you can see, it is a huge artificial banana tree. You can't get more jungly than that. And as I slide it into position, it should fit nicely in this little corner of the fish room. And thus, the makeover is complete.